everybody, it's Lori Webb, and I am here to share this little, new fixture in the the entrepreneur hotline, and that is entrepreneur fables or fable time. Fable time. Now, throughout this, I've been telling stories and connecting uh, childhood literature memories and acquainting it with the the challenges and the journey of entrepreneurship. And one of my all time favorites is The Tortoise and the Hare, which I've mentioned several times. Well, just to keep it official, we're doing The Tortoise and the Hare, this time with my phone because the book doesn't have it in there. And I want to read it exactly as it is supposed to be read. So here we go. The Tortoise and the Hare. One day, a hare was bragging about how fast he could run. He bragged and even laughed at the tortoise, who was so slow. The tortoise stretched out his long neck and challenged the hare to a race, which of course made the hare laugh. My, what a joke, thought the hare. A race? Indeed, a race? Oh, what fun. My, a race, of course, Mr. Tortoise. We shall race, said the hare. The forest animals met and mapped out the course. The race begun, and the hare, being such a swift runner, soon left the tortoise far behind. About halfway through the course, it occurred to the hare that he had plenty of time to beat the slow trodden tortoise. Oh my, thought the hare, I've plenty of time to play in the meadow here. And so he did. After the hare finished playing, he decided that he had time to take a nap. I've plenty of time to beat the tortoise. And he snuggled up to a tree and dozed. The tortoise, in the meantime, continued to plod on, albeit it ever so slowly. He never stopped, but took one good step after the other. The hare finally woke from his nap. Time to get going, he thought, and off he went faster than he had ever run before. He dashed as quickly as anyone ever could up to the finish line, where he met the tortoise, who was patiently waiting for his arrival. The Tortoise and the Hare. Now, that story I love so much because it has many rich layers, good food for thought to discuss a few themes. That would be speed, that would be overconfidence, that would be tenacity, that would be confidence again, but from another angle, not confidence as much as it was, okay, bravado. And another thing, belief. So those themes, those ideas, I would like to talk about now. And that is, so it's clearly not a race. That's another thing, is that if you're going to do a race, then the race should be appropriately paired, right? So you want to be in the race uh, that that makes sense. So it doesn't make sense to race against a tortoise if you're a hare, or a hare if you're a tortoise, does it? But on the one hand, it could, because there you have that. So if we take it from the tortoise's side, the tortoise knows that the hare is fast, obviously. But what the story doesn't get into is, most probably in the tortoise actually knows the way that the hare works, and that there could be a great possibility that the hare would get bored, would get sidetracked, and decide to go off course. And that's exactly what he did. I don't believe that a tortoise in his right mind would want to race a hare thinking that it could beat it under normal circumstances? So, and if you think about this, you have the tortoise, and the tortoise is the underdog, right? But the tortoise wins because the hare is distracted. The hare is overconfident. The hare is so fast that he gets distracted because he's waiting for the tortoise and thinks that it's not, doesn't see it as a real competition. And that's something that, as entrepreneurs, you really need to pay attention to. Sometimes you think you're so advanced, you think you're ahead, you think, nothing can touch you in terms of, oh, I'm working on a product, our product is great and we're doing these things that are so far advanced, and you get working on it, and suddenly something comes up, and situation out of your control, sometimes it is within your control, but you lose sight, and that's where you lose the race. Even if you have all the wherefore, all of the, you have the right team, you have the right idea, you have the right time, you have the right skill set, and you even have the right mindset. You're going out there to win, you're fast, you're strong, you've run mini races, and you can do it again. But when you lose sight and you lose that focus and get distracted to do something else, then you become at risk because you're not staying in your lane of genius, for keeping on par with this analogy. So when the hare lets go of his strongest point, his competitive factor, when he goes against that, that's where the tortoise beats him. The tortoise doesn't beat him on skill. The tortoise doesn't beat him on raw talent. The tortoise beats him on his mindset. The tortoise beats him on his inability to finish what he started before celebrating what he started. And that is, I think, a strong moral for entrepreneurs. Now, on the flip side, the hare, the story is written from the perspective of that the hare is the winner, and he is the winner in the race. But this idea of slow and steady wins the race. Well, in truth, in running, slow and steady never wins the race unless you are running a marathon, and still there is an element of speed in that. It's steady, but in steady and contextually faster than the competition. So it isn't about being the slowest one. It is about being the one who keeps taking steps, who continues to trudge along, who continues to believe in their own ability, who dares to also have that bravado to say, I know you think you're fast. I know you think you can beat me, but I think I have another strategy. I have something that can help stead me in the best way, that can help me, help me win. So I think that's also a good story. Now, the story that doesn't get told, or that most people don't look at, that I look at, is the story of the the, the marriage, the conflict, or the connection, uh, the 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 space between the two. And so deciding that there is nothing inherently wrong with the tortoise being slow and methodical, and deciding that there's nothing wrong with the hare being uh, fast and impetuous, or um, yes, impetuous, wanting to do things on the fly, passionate about what he's doing. What the problem Where the problem lies is in the combination, in an expectation for to be able to compare the two of them. So it's like comparing apples and oranges, right? They are different things, and to compare them is hard because there is no lines of comparison. And so to think about that in your business, you could think of collaboration. And I mentioned this earlier. I think I mentioned it probably a couple of times. I'm really obsessed with it at the moment. It's something, it's a work in progress, but the concept of, or the power of understanding the importance of speed and delivery in your collaborative um, partnerships. So if you are a Hare um, and you are working with a group of Tortoise, you will be very frustrated. You will be constantly pulling at them, and they will be constantly frustrated because they will be constantly wanting to take one step at a time, being stressed by the fact that you want them to do something that is beyond them, or beyond, at least, beyond their actual capabilities or their mental capabilities. uh, you have to have an understanding of what their situation is, and you have to have an understanding of, while accepting their situation and trying to honor and be mindful of their situation, you have to also consider how that affects you and your ability to be efficient and effective. Because what happens is, if it's in your nature to be fast and to get it and to do things, and to, people say being easily distracted, and Colin and Gail and I were laughing, and, people talk shiny object syndrome, and entrepreneurs, ooh, where is it? But I think that there are people types, and I think there are the people who are like that. And part of it is because the speed is off. That if you there's once upon a time we had a Wii, and when playing that Wii, um, we played Guitar Hero on the Wii, and I'm a fast person. And when I was trying to do the Wii the slow way, I actually, even though it would seem, that I'm not very proficient in playing a real guitar or a plastic guitar, I'm okay. But when I started to play it faster, my hands were better faster than they were slower. I actually dropped more notes when I was trying to play it slow, because I felt like I was waiting for the notes, and I lost concentration. I lost my way. But when it was on speed, when it was on tempo, then I could do it. And I believe that that's the case for many people, whether you are, geared for doing things quickly, then that will be where your zone of genius is. And I don't mean being sloppy. I mean just being quickly, just doing things quickly. Now, if you are a if you like things to be slower, and you like to be more methodical about things, then that's where your zone is going to be. And when you get rocked out of that, you are going to be at risk of also making mistakes. When you do, the problem is often that people have an understanding that people that fast can be often equated with not being thorough, and not being um, yeah, well thought out. Yeah, thorough, well thought out, or considered. And I don't think that that's always the case. That can be the case, but I don't think that's always the case. I think if that is your speed, I can't think of the word I'm reaching for, but if that's your speed, if that's your setting, that's where you operate, and that's where you operate best, then it is, because people don't understand that, if people don't understand that you can read really quickly, or you can your acquisition of information is very quick, your ability, someone's ability maybe to catch on to choreography really quickly, if that's what is in their nature to do, if that's their setting, then they're not being sloppy. They're just being who they are. Now, if it takes you more time and being slow, then it to get the information. If you compare it and not compare it on the speed, you just compare it on the results at a certain point in time, then I believe that you can make more of a comparison because people are working within their area. It's for lack of a better expression or way of doing things, it's like comparing English and Danish in my case. Uh, one language is not better than the other. They're just different languages. And if you compare the languages directly to each other, that's not where it should be. It's what is the message, and the language is the vehicle of communicating that message. If you're able to do that in either of the languages, then there is a win-win there. There isn't a better or a worse. There isn't a situation that pegs one against the other. And I think that's something that entrepreneurs can also use uh, from this fable. So, thinking about teams, thinking about matching, making a match, but also considering when I was talking about how can how it can be a conflict and how it can be a challenge, but it can also be, of course, a good thing. It's good to have diversity. So to have a team that's composed of members of the team who have a quick acquisition, who are more have a fast setting, a Hare setting, and to also compare against entrepreneurs who have a slower setting, because there is a nice balance there and you cover all the bases and all the speeds. So I hope that this little fable can give you some insights into the way that you work and how you work with people. The speed. Have you ever thought of yourself? Are you a hare or are you a tortoise or a turtle? Um, you know, I I think that both of them have a place, and I think that they are each valuable. But I can also say from experience, because yeah, my best friend's a turtle, and I love her to death. And she just is more methodical and does things at a slower pace. And it's from her side, I'm rushing and I'm doing things, and she's going and doing things. And we've been friends for almost 30 years, and it still works. So I tease her, she teases me. I tease her probably a little bit more, but I love her. So it's no hard feelings, right, B? Uh, I think understanding how to work in the situation is the key thing. That so there are times when the conflict is a problem. I'm not talking about my friend. I'm talking about in a work situation, and in terms of expectations and default settings in terms of placing value on one or the other, and therefore making one feel bad, maybe, or be pushed to work outside of their comfort zone, whether that's slowing down or speeding up. All right, it's time for a little break. So I'm going to put this on a I'll be back message, and I will, in fact, be back. Okay, everyone, we are at 11 o'clock almost, and I am thinking it's time to do a little something something. So, this concept, while we're on 24/7 to support entrepreneurs, to give them a platform to share their uh, wisdom and share their experiences and their resources, it to give them visibility. It is also a platform for being able to hear about new and interesting types of things, to be able to just know that there's somebody there in case you need to reach out and speak with them, to hear the stories that hopefully can inspire or motivate you into action when you are frustrated and feeling a little stuck. And it is to give you some practical tools to make you more efficient in your job. So, on that note, in 2015, I was again attending Social Media Week. I was one of the speakers. I did three speeches at that during this time in 2015 here in Copenhagen. And one is my adaptation of Alex Oostervelde, the Belgian yeah, author, and Yves Pigneur, I believe, who wrote Business Model Canvas. And I was looking at it and thinking that made so much sense. I have a background in experience design, and so design thinking is something that came into my vocabulary about 20 years ago. And to be able to apply it in a social media, I've actually also created some the speaker wheel as well, but to look at it from a new perspective. So I am going to do that right now. I'm going to go over to my presentation and we are going to begin. So, introducing the social media canvas. This is a repurposed presentation, as said, from 2015. Uh, it was during Social Media Week Copenhagen, and here I am delivering it to you again. I think it's still valid. There's some adaptions, but all's good. So, introducing the social media management wheel. Now, in 2009, why the social media wheel? Why is this relevant? It is relevant because when people are going out, yeah, I think let's start at the beginning. I began doing social media marketing, social media design, platform development quite early on, and have studied under the most prominent social media quote unquote gurus, have watched people grow on platforms, taking their followings from zero to, at this point, millions, and have been paying attention to the journey that they've taken and looked at it and deconstructed some of it and watched what was coming down the pike and why certain things were going to be more interesting than others. Some of the platforms that I got on and invested quite a bit of time and energy in, for example, Google Plus, I did a translation. I did a guide on Google Plus. I was there for the first Google Plus chef show. I was engaged in creating the like quick step guide, and thought, oh, this could be, very interesting. It's Google, and it had some very interesting applications. I liked where it wasn't trying to be Facebook, and I thought that it had a lot of great potential. But I think that this competition, the Google Plus wars, as I call them, this wanting to beat out the other social media, what didn't make sense to me, because as I mentioned earlier or have mentioned before, uh, or the point is, social media. I'm going to give you two examples. One is social media, like a cafe, is many different cafes in a community. And sometimes you go there because it's convenient, because it's right around the corner from where you live. Sometimes you go there because you want to have the best coffee, and they have they have the reputation for having the best coffee and serving the best coffee. One of them you go to because you know you're going to be able to, they have the best, activities. They may have some games, and they may have some great music, and they have a lot of engagement. And others because it's quiet, because they have excellent Wi-Fi, because you can concentrate. The seats are comfortable, but you can focus on what you need to do, etc., etc. So sometimes one suits the purpose better than others. It's not that you only go to the one cafe over and over, although there are types that do that, and there are those that are happy on one singular platform. But most people diversify, and the diversification is more like akin to having stores in cities and then having these small sample stores in airports. And that is to give people a taste of what they could have if they went into the city. The idea that if you come to my little shop in Copenhagen Airport and you're not staying in Copenhagen, you maybe next time you'll come into the city and go to my shop. Or if you are staying in Copenhagen, you'll think, wow, that was a really cool shop. I'd love to see the bigger version of it. So, this is why having a good strategy and thinking about how social media actually mimics, or, actually, we don't even really call it social media anymore, but this is a 2015 presentation. And this idea of it being social. Right now, it's become more digital marketing, although I would argue that there is some elements of social media depending on which platform and how it's being used. So let's move on. Now, the beauty of social media is it has the opportunities that are endless for you, because it is a blank canvas. In 2015, more so than today, because it's been so, in a way, kind of institutionalized. There's so many norms that have been established. It's not the Wild West. It's not as much of a blank canvas as it was. People are not playing on the media as much as they used to on the different platforms. But let's, for the sake of this presentation, take it take me at my word. And here you have this blank canvas. So to start with that blank canvas, as a designer and working with design thinking, I would start by using the same method as Osterwelder and Pignard did, and that is tapping into this design thinking, looking at the key ways that value is created. And those are those three ways: the sweet spot, when you are able to connect desirability. What does the market want? In this case, what does your social platform, the people on your social platforms, what are they interested in? What are they looking for? How can you help them? How can you best serve them? What are the ways that they want to be served? How do they want their, what is the modality that they prefer? What are the types of content they like consuming? These are things that you're going to consider with the desirability. You want to match what is wanting to be had, what people might not even know that they want, going to deeper levels, and having an eye on that so that you can combine it with your ability to produce that, your ability to satisfy that need, and that is through your feasibility. Do you have what it takes to deliver on the promise that you made? The promise being the desirability, the what people would like. You make a promise that I have that, I can get that to you, and what do you have that allows you to produce that, to deliver on that promise? And then the final piece is the viability. So is it cost effective? Can you get a return on investment? Can you get a return on engagement in this case by the amount of energy and the amount of resources that you're using to actually satisfy the needs in the desirability area? That's where the value is. So I hope that, yeah, I hope that makes sense to you. We're going to move on. I'm just going to go into each of these a little bit further. But first, I'm going to do a layover, an overlay, sorry, of a reinterpreted model of the business model canvas of sorts. I switched it because I applied it to social, and then I put an overlay of how you see design thinking, how the model was actually created based on design thinking from the business model canvas, and how it's being used in this this social media canvas, which evolves into the social media wheel. And so if you look at it, you look at the right side, and that is the desirability, the top right. And that involves connection value, connection style, connections, and delivery paths. On the left side, you have that is what you have within your company, within your resources. That if that company is just you alone, that's also fine. But when I say influencers, over the last 4 years, that term has come to mean something completely different than it did 4 years ago. And so the way I was using it was really decision makers, really the people who are influencing how you are able to use the resources, the people who are the decision makers in terms of your processes and your amount of time, these things, your core actions and your core resources, your partners, those are the back end as opposed to the connections. The viability is the cost of engagement, which is on the left side, because those are the internal business workings, and the cost of engagement is a part of the interior, and the return on engagement is a part of the external. So what I did was I superimposed that onto what I thought would be a more appropriate form as a designer, looking at the circle because it's secular. And years ago, I did a model, and I was using, it was ethos and pathos and logos, right? For a model that I created, actually a method called design souveniring. And in thinking about the circular activity, to me made more sense because social media is always going. You're always continuing. It's a process. It's a cyclical process. And also the idea that because you can approach it, this is the actual, even though the form is different for business model canvas, it's flat. It is thought you can approach it from different angles. So you can begin focusing on desirability to create certain types of business models, or you focus on what you have available to you. So it's inner driven. The innovation comes from within the company, and that is, dealing with what kind of, your feasibility. If we go back using again that design thinking and how that method got created, we go all the way back to Alan Cooper, who wrote the book The Inmates Are Running the Asylum, and he has sections about that and breaks down feasibility and viability and desirability. And when he uses feasibility, he's talking about engineering, because he was talking about, it was the early development of the internet and websites and technology, how people were, human-centered technology. And yeah, let's get back to it. So if you look at this, you can see I took, I put these key areas, these 3 key areas, and then the sweet spot of value. And the other advantage of having the wheel is that it can turn, so that while you're focusing, you can actually turn it, and that can be integrated into more of a worksheet application, so you can actually mark those down in an expanded version of this. This is looking at, first and foremost, you could be looking at what's at the top right now. I'm going to just say that. So when you're looking at the cost of engagement, for example, let's take that one, viability. So your cost of engagement is also counter. If you can see this here, these also are important. So it's going around, but it's also what is direct opposite of it. The cost of engagement versus the return on engagement is where you have the value. You want to have, obviously, more return on engagement than you do the cost of engagement. Invest, how much are you investing? And I also took this to be at a broader sense. So when I'm saying the cost of engagement, I'm not talking simply about economic cost, because in so many cases, people, especially back in the day, oh, social media, it's free. Only if your time is free, and your time is never free. And there's a lot now that we can see it really does cost, because of the nature of how social media evolved, which was not going to be easy to foresee 20 years ago, 10 years ago. So the cost of engagement versus the return on engagement. Then we go to this desirability. So the connection. So who are you looking for, and why, and what's the connection style? How do they want to be catered to? Then going down to the delivery path, that is going to inform it. And in the section, you can see how the connections, so these are the people. So the connections, how you get those through how the based on the influences of how the human resources, basically, how you're able to deliver on the promise based on the human resources you have, the human, decision making power is going to be directly correlated. How they make the decisions that they make, so that they allot you with the right core resources, so that you can actually take the right actions. And that is how you, in turn, are able to align with the connections that you have, that you take those core resources and can apply them to connecting in the way that they like, taking those core actions so that you can leverage the delivery path, which ultimately will lead to you getting a higher return on engagement, hopefully a lower cost of engagement, because the more that you have your tribe engage with you, then they spread the word. And there's a lot of, once you convert a follower, it makes it easier. It's easier to keep a follower than it is to convert a follower. So what you want to do is maintain energy and synergy and nurturing and, yeah, support. That is the real tricky part. So this is how I reinterpreted it from a design standpoint. This has developed over the years, but in this example, this is the one that I have available. And I set it up so that that return is encapsulating the feasibility side. So how the connections and the core actions and the core resources are being used. I'm sorry, I misspoke there. That is the desirability side. Desirability side. And on the bottom here, we have the connection style, the delivery path, and influencers, which is the feasibility side. And then that includes the cost. So inner company, outer company, or external, internal and external. The sweet spot is actually in the middle. That's why this is a little bit visually misleading, but it is a combination of both of those and the viability at the bottom. That's what you want. So the connection value, much like fine wine, a fine wine collection, the value is in each individual bottle, each individual follower, each individual potential connection, and how you care for those bottles and how you manage them, not, being careful to pay attention to, some wines, uh, take a certain amount of time to age before they taste like anything, and others you can drink more rapidly, and you have to understand when one is A and when one is B. So you have to pay attention to that connection value, and you have to be able to look for how you create it so that you have, yes, so that you have deeper relationships over time that accrue in value, the desirability section. And that is, what are you looking for, and what are the aspirations of your potential tribe? Let's say you're starting from square one, you're getting on social media today. You finally decided it's something that's really here. And starting out now, I think your intention is really critical, because it can feel really very much like a big giant mess. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of sell, sell, sell. There's a lot of advertisement. There's a lot of wolves in sheep's clothing out there pretending that they're interested in you, uh, using templates to connect with you, basically following a structure and a system. And I'm sharing with you a system. It's not because all systems are bad, I think, but a unevaluated system can be dangerous. And if you're just, following what somebody told you to do, and you don't know the context of why they did what they did, and to be quite honest, many of the experts, myself included, you would be hard pressed to get the same results years later that you did years before. So getting the amount of followers through any platform is always going to be easier in the beginning than it is later, once it's established and everybody's there, because it's a numbers game. It's like, it makes so much sense, right? There's a reason why a small country like Denmark is not as loud and boisterous and uh, needing to uh, you know have sharp elbows so that they can get a seat at the table, as opposed to a larger country like America, where you're competing against millions and millions and millions of people. You have to speak up. You have to do something to stand out and be seen. So these are just the way that things are. They're not good or bad. You need to understand when when people are screaming because they are desperate to be heard and need to be seen, and you have to understand when they're doing it because they're obnoxious, and you have to know when they're doing it because that's what they know from a cultural standpoint, that's how they get that's that's the norm for getting the attention. There's no malice of intent. There's no nothing nothing other than just a way that it helps them to get what they need, and vice versa. If people are not shouting and kind of letting you know what they do, maybe they're because they're more shy about it and feeling like it would be disrespectful to go on a platform and tell people how great I am. That's part of their cultural journey as well, and that's you're looking to see how you can make a match, and how if you're aiming to go out and serve people and give them value, you're looking to see where that is in alignment, so that you're not wasting your time trying to uh, you know connect with people who are really not interested in you and not interested in what you have. They're not your market. They're not your people. Move on. Your people are around the corner, perhaps. So, desirability. Now, how clear are you on your connections? Now, do you really know your connections? Are you really paying attention, or are you just collecting numbers? Remember, like that fine wine, you're not just like, say wine because wine has a certain status, has a certain story, has a certain depth. Uh, they're not just bottles. They're it's the content within the bottles, and it's how you man you know how you manage that bottle will affect the content and the results and the return that you get, right? So you have to be clear on your connections and how to treat them. What do they like, right? Who are they? What are the as I mentioned, you know, wanting to give them something that makes it interesting for them, that is in the right modality for them. You also have to know what they're used to. And so by knowing that, what the norms are for them, where would doing something different be offensive versus where would doing something different be a fresh approach. You have to look at the way they like to consume their information, where they're looking for their information, what is the path to get to them. And in that case, we're, is it LinkedIn? Is it Pinterest? Is it Instagram? Is it TikTok? Is it why I just went blank? Yeah, you know, Periscope, Snapchat, all of those. You have to know where they go. Where are they traveling? What roads are they traveling down? And maybe you can hitch a ride, or maybe you can give them a lift. Now let's talk about feasibility. Feasibility. Now, so here's a great opportunity. It's understanding who makes the honey, because in feasibility in your company, often people are making you have it people are isolating the social media digital marketing aspect of their business, and it's integrated in everything. Who's making the honey is all about the worker bees. It's the bees. The bees are the ones who make the honey, and you need to pay attention to that network. You need to understand that by empowering them as an influencer, as management, you want to give people agency, everyone from, whoever's coming into to work with you, to, from, entry level student to top executive. You want everyone to have an ability to share your story because it's being shared. People are going out more so than ever. Earlier, there were restraints about how, there were a lot of companies where you couldn't have a Facebook account, you couldn't have private accounts, you couldn't do this, that, and the other thing. But now that companies have grown to embrace social in another way, how it's become a norm and how it integrates into the marketing arm of business, everyone has a chance to tell their story in a more authentic way. So it isn't, oh, the only channel, the only path we're taking is, looking at that street earlier in the presentation. Are you down a desert street? Are you, whoops, oh, I lost the street. Anyway, okay. Well, are you going down this long road alone? Are you on a crowded street? Are you on a Vegas street with lights and sounds? And you have to understand where the people are, and you also have to leverage where the people are. Much like the growth of just take the picture with your smartphone. You don't need to go out with the fancy, expensive camera to get the good shots to outperform others, because as was the case early, in the beginning, it's not just about taking the best picture, right? And having, because there are beautiful pictures. You have some of the best photographers in the world who are producing content, and people are scrolling through it like, they've become numb to it because it's in such abundance. You can appreciate it, but you don't have the same appreciation as, for example, from my generation, when you would look at pictures from National Geographics and you would just be dumbstruck because many of those photographers had access to areas that the rest of us did not. Now the rest of us are trekking all over the world and getting into, exploring previously less explored areas, and taking more exotic, going to more exotic places, and you know having better equipment and having a capacity to also produce quite extensive uh, catalogs of good content. So leverage the bees, let them do their thing, make that honey, make that money. Yeah, yeah, make that honey. Honey's good and it spreads. So, what are the core actions to making that money and that honey and spreading that joy and message? And depending on what business, what area you're in, also using this for nonprofits, using it for educational purposes, using it as vehicles for, you know, professional development, using it for vehicles for mindfulness, for health, for you name it. So remember back to that blank canvas. So looking at the core actions that are going to get you there, what is the smartest way for you to use your time? What kind of tools? That's going to be something that is also relevant. Who has the capacity to either learn if they're not, if they're not able to if they haven't already mastered the different modalities, the different platforms, the different clients to use, then they have to have an interest and they have to have access to information and setting up the accounts and being able to effortlessly, not necessarily effortlessly, but hopefully effortlessly move from one platform to the other, to be able to integrate it, because time is of the essence. And when you figure out the plan, then it's easier to jam. It's easier to get going and make it work. So think about those core actions also in terms of something more operational, you know, writing down those key, basically, creating a checklist, much like, surgeons or air pilots, airline pilots. Yeah. Checklist, just so that you don't miss anything. And another thing I would suggest is the basically have ready list, the all the things that you need, have it all collected and have it all ready to go, so that you aren't right in the middle of filling out a platform and having to suddenly, oh, I need a picture, I have to go and find out this information, because then you are management through distraction, going from one tab to the other. Then the tab might, you might drop the tab, or you might lose your concentration, or you might forget things and start, having to waste your time backtracking. So have everything all together. Know what the conventions are from platform to platform. It's getting easier because there's a lot of great design tools, and there's a lot of clients that integrate these great design tools. And so you don't have to use as much brain power on it, not so much gray matter, but understand those core actions, make a checklist, have it ready, and enjoy the benefits of that. Now, what are your core resources? What are you working from? What is allowed if you're working in a, a larger company, or you have more stakeholders involved? You have to check out, the rules, because it's not the Wild West anymore. And to understand if you're going to be putting up, in terms of the media that you're using as your core resources, are you focusing on writing? Are you focusing on uh, delivering content in written form? Are you interested in delivering content in graphic form? Are you interested in what type of graphic form? So any, how are you using emojis, emoticons? Are you using are you using infographics? Are you integrating knowledge templates? stimulating people to engage through polls, through questionnaires? Are you using the resources from your workforce? So the stories, gathering the stories, the human element, the human resources, the core human resources. Are you leveraging the kind of the visual stories? So going to work or going through the process, this is my day, and where you are taking little snapshots of life, or giving a slice of life, or behind the scenes. There's a lot of ways that you can use the resources that you have within your company, and also the resources that are prevalent on the internet to up the game, the level of design, aesthetic, so that it looks more professional. So the viability element, there you go. Yes, you want to have a product that will be sustainable. You want to have a service that is sustainable. You want to have a experience that's sustainable. And through social media, there is countless opportunities. It is a lush environment, but it is also perhaps a crowded, unknown, scary, and even at times dangerous environment. So you got to know how to trek in the social wild. So that takes us to that direct viability of the cost of engagement, and the cost. I would suggest, you know, looking into the broader cost, as I mentioned earlier. So not how much are you spending to have someone come in and pay for the service of or how much does it cost to actually have expertise? That's something that you can definitely look into and consider, if it's going to save you money down the line, if it's going to get you better quality leads, if it's going to uh, make sure that you are going down the correct paths. That's that it can help you in so many ways to leverage that expertise, but also what is the cost that your employees are using, that you're using, that the company, the resources, in terms of the time, the energy. What does it take away from other projects? What does it cost in terms of you? You know, transparency is very important, but in terms of transparency and being open, also versus being too vulnerable. And what are the protocols, and what does it cost for the protocols to be put into place so that you're covered? And what are the protocols that can be put into place for you to manage when there's some element of discourse that has to be tackled, and you may need legal action that you have to use money on. You may have to actually pay somebody if if it doesn't go well. There's elements to this that you need to consider, along with the basic, your what are the costs to what is the cost of engagement, what's the cost to get on the platforms and really make a dent, so that you can move faster. Are you investing in ads? You have to consider that, what kind of ad spend makes sense, if at all. And that's something to consider, in comparison to, of course, what the other side is. So that is your return. And I don't want you to worry, as the quote says, don't worry about a thing. Every little thing is going to be all right, Mr. Bob Marley, because this is something that is doable. It is a time that opens so many opportunities. And when you look at it, it gives you a chance to be innovative in your company, in the very least, in the way you communicate what you do, how you are best able to deliver on the promise that you are giving your customers, your patients, your students, your teachers, your staff, your etc. etc. This is the Wild West in terms of, well, it's not the Wild West, it's the West. There's still a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of uncharted territory. There are platforms coming out all the time, and you get a chance to play. You get a, look at that new platform as an opportunity, especially when there's not a lot of people and not a lot of attention on you. So you're less likely to be afraid that you're going to make a false move. You don't, nobody wants to be the one who goes to the dinner party and, you know, if you're not trained in etiquette, you might be afraid that you're going to make a move that's going to be embarrassing for you. Nobody wants to be that, right? Or maybe that's just me. So don't worry about a thing. And because there is help, and you can take this model, not this one, the other one, but take these things that I spoke to you about and integrate that into your system, into your thinking, into a meeting, into the people that are the decision makers. Kind of look at it, see where it could give you value and how you could leverage some of these ideas to kind of fine tune your approach to social media. This is the social media strategy wheel that you can have in a larger form and then make the notes in there, writing, so that you have like a one-page view of it to get you started. And that is, the sky is the limit. So I hope that this gave you some insights into how social media can be helpful for you and useful. And even though it's from 2015, because it's also rooted in design thinking, that it's still relevant today. Think of it in terms of design thinking. 3 prongs: desirability, feasibility, and viability, right? Be sustainable. Do it. Okay. Now I appreciate your time, and I'm going to uh, be getting ready to wind down for the night, as in go to bed and maybe get a good night's sleep before coming back in the morning for day number 4. So I'm going to put this on social monitoring or on monitoring so that I can work in the background to take care of some back end things. And you let me know if you need me. Cheers. Okay, everybody. So I hope that you enjoyed that presentation and that you will be able to use it. I am going to be signing off. It's a little bit early, but I'm coming back to. Aha, there we go. Wow. All right. So, what we did in this little segment was a little tortoise and the hare action through the entrepreneur fable. And we actually, well, I went through a presentation. I repurposed a presentation called Introducing the Social Media Canvas, which I introduced in 2015 at the Social Media Week in Copenhagen. Thought maybe that was worth bringing up, even though times have changed, platforms have changed, some have gone down, some have been, enveloped in others. So much happening. But there's something there for people who are interested in the space, and it is a presentation as opposed to stream of consciousness talking. And I will be sharing some presentations with you tomorrow, and some of that resources. I'm I was like having the struggle with the tech to get to it so that I could show you, but because I was live, I wasn't able to do what I needed to do. So hopefully, after I get some sleep, then I can get up and work on the back end where I don't have to be focused on being live on the platform, and can get that to to work the right way and share it with you tomorrow, because the time is a ticking and we are almost finished with our journey of this pilot project of the social. um, okay, Lori. Yeah, you know what it's called, the entrepreneur hotline. Yes, I was just in the social world. So okay, I am going to be seriously signing off because I can feel that I am I have gone from the hare Lori to the tortoise Lori, and that is a sign that I'm running out of energy, and that is it's time to go. So entrepreneurs, know your limits and be careful. Take care of yourself. Your health is important, even when you're doing a great important project like we are on this. Uh, it's been great, and even though I am pushing through and Gail is pushing through, especially we um, we are dedicated to the cause, and Colin is dedicated to the cause, and we are working to give you as much value as we can during this week, with the intent that we will be able to take the project and grow it in future. So you'll hear more about that. And if you have specific questions, then please let us know. We are on all platforms, and you can always write to us. So there you go.